here know what is social psychology, what does it entail, right? Like it is um till up until like social psychology, emergence of social psychology, a lot of other fields mainly focused on, a lot of it was internal and just limited to the individual, right? And with the emergence of social psychology, psychologists try to understand how, like what is the interaction and impact of the social back, like the social context, the social world on the individual. And it's not just like internally or related to our, like just the childhood or internally what is happening with me, but the world around me also has an impact on me, right? So let's just quickly look at the nature. So the nature, so social psychology is a very scientific field, and what makes it scientific is that there is a lot of research that supports the field, right? You guys might be aware of, like, can you tell me like some of the very famous social psychology experiments that you might have studied throughout like your UG and PG as well? Anything that you guys remember? Yes, yes, correct, correct. The Stanford prison experiment, the most one of the most infamous experiments, Milgram bystander. Yes, correct. So like when we think of like even in psychology, like you might see even in in pop psychology, when there are like psychology facts or this, there are a lot of these experiments, and a lot of them come from social psychology. So it's a very scientific field where it's not just limited to basic, that is like just the theoretical aspect, but also its implications and applications in the real world, right? And there's like this focus on not just the individual, but also what is the impact of the social world around the individual, right? And how like how does that and try and individuals trying to navigate throughout the world, how do they do it, how do they find meaning in relationships, right? And it is, as we know, like it's an interdisciplinary field, which means that it is based like on sociology as well as psychology. But what makes it different from sociology is over there we try to understand how social contexts have an effect on larger groups of people, which is like it can be like ethnic groups, it can be gender groups, racial groups, things like that. But here in social psychology, the difference is how do social contexts have an impact on the individual person, right? So that differentiates. And of course, like in psychology we also understand the behavior context of it. And scope, you can just have a read, we'll not delve into this because we'll be doing it in detail uh soon. Okay. So this is like an overview of the history, like an overall, brief history of social psychology. The earliest social experiment was, you can like read the points, conducted by Triplet, and the textbook, the first textbooks were published in these years. And but like when was sociology, social psychology, when did it emerge, or like when did it become more prominent or famous, was during like 1940s to 1950s, where Kurt Lewin, he's known as the father of modern or social psychology, and Leon Festinger. So both of them like did a lot of work, and not just theoretical, but there's a lot of real life applications where they try to solve a lot of institutional level issues as well. So that happened during this era. And unfortunately or fortunately, like like a lot of other fields in psychology, like even social psychology flourished. We do study that, like discrimination, prejudice. Yeah, you're correct. It's just that we add, like, it is a psychology subject, so we also add like what causes that behavior, right? So that sets it apart from sociology. So yeah, as I was saying that like a lot of other fields in psychology, even social psychology, like a lot of prominently, a lot of research started, like after the World War, or trying to understand, okay, how could, during Nazi Germany, how could Hitler get so many people to obey and do such horrible things to others, right? So we after that, we know there were a lot of like researches that came about regarding like group dynamics and conformity, and why would people commit such horrible things. So that's like the overall history of social psychology. Now let's look at like some of the theories in social psychology. First is the field theory. As we saw that Kurt Lewin was one of the pioneers in social psychology. So there's this formula in his field theory, which is B equals to FPE. Here B is behavior, which means that behavior is the function of a person and their environment. So like how we behave in the world, or how we behave in our everyday life, that will depend not just on the environment, but also my personal characteristics. So it's a combination. So like the debate that we have in psychology, like nature versus nurture. So here, like Kurt Lewin said, no, it's not just nature or nurture, but it's a combination of both, where like it's the environment as well as like my personal characteristics. He used this term life space regions as well, where life space regions can be divided mainly into two aspects, right? It's like all the everything, like psychological environment that is surrounding the person. So what is the social surrounding? It is like your home, your family, your community, your school, your profession. So all the social environment and personal factors. So personal factors, my personality, my dreams, my aspirations, my goals, my likings, my dislikings, right? So there is, so whatever my personal aspects are, and you combine that with the environment, and that will result in how I will behave in my daily life. So one example to just understand this, right? Like we'll take two people, right? One is Vignesh, who's like an 18-year-old coming from a lower socioeconomic background, and Vignesh and his classmate Ryan, both of them get into this. I Both of them are classmates, right? But there's this one difference where Vignesh comes from a lower socioeconomic background and Ryan comes from an upper middle class background. These are the social environment of these two kids, right? And personal can be like Vignesh. Let's say Vignesh is someone, someone who has like seen his parents being very hardworking, maybe working multiple jobs, right? And living through hardships of coming from a certain socioeconomic background, that makes him more resilient, or makes him more hardworking and more ambitious in life, right? Versus Ryan, who comes from a much more privileged background, right? So he might have not had to work, maybe like might have not had to go through very difficult conditions or life situations, and has joined this internship because his parents were like, oh, you have to work for your own pocket money, right? So now how, one way to understand why, maybe let's say it's just typical example, why one intern might be a better working professional versus another, right? So here the behavior of Vignesh, like it will depend on his personal qualities, which is he's hardworking, resilient, he has his goals. So in personal factors, his goals and aspirations will also come, where he wants to make sure that I do really well in this internship, so that it will ensure me a job, so that I can support my family, right? And social, like the aspect of, yes, correct, correct. So and social aspect also entails that, he has to also support his family. He has his own dreams. He has to support his education as well. Versus for Ryan, maybe it's just like a matter of pocket money, right? So maybe we'll understand, okay, oh, I see, then they get a feedback, and, the supervisors are saying, okay, okay, Ryan is, like he has his good educational, like he has the skills and knowledge, but he's not a very reliable person. He might just take a leave without considering other things, so very callous attitude. But Vignesh is not. Then we try to understand why the behavior is different, even though both of them come from the same class and same college class, as in their batch, and then same college, but Vignesh might be a really good professional, like his professional ethics, his work ethics might be really great, right? So that can be a result of both their internal personalities as well as their environment. So this is what Kurt Lewin was trying to explain, that behavior is a function of person and their environment. If you guys have any doubts, please do let me know. 1 second. Yeah. The second important theory is the cognitive dissonance theory, right? So this was given by Leon Festinger. His book was published in 1957. So your cognitive dissonance, you guys might have heard this, in certain therapies and certain other in other fields as well. But what does cognitive dissonance mean? So here, let me just take this example of this woman Rita. Okay, she is a 45-year-old married woman, and her moral values do constitute कि, yeah, cheating. Usually, I think most of us agree that cheating or infidelity in romantic relationships, in marriages, is wrong or is bad, right? Uh, but then, so she, as most of us, even she believes that, yeah, cheating is bad. Cheating, we shouldn't cheat on our partners. But she might end up, and she ends up cheating on her husband. Okay, and then what happens is, her thoughts and beliefs are that, yeah, cheating is bad, it's morally wrong, it's a bad thing to cheat on someone. But her behavior is something else, which is, maybe she has formed a very emotional bond with, like, a colleague in her office, or there's, instead of spending quality time with her husband, like she ends up like talking to him, or going, what are the behaviors of cheating? People might spend less time with their partners and with the people that they're cheating with, things like that, right? So now there is this inconsistency between her thoughts and beliefs, which is cheating is bad, and her behavior where she is cheating. And then when this inconsistency happens, what happens is, there's a lot of tension, there's anxiety and pain, and this is called cognitive dissonance, right? And the theory, and then what did Leon say? We are usually like drive, we have this drive to decrease the tension that we are feeling, right? So we will try to decrease the cognitive dissonance that we feel. And there are different methods in which we can decrease this cognitive dissonance. So like one of them is, like, of course, to resolve the cognitive dissonance, you have to resolve the inconsistency. So we'll try to decrease the inconsistency. One way to do it can be change of thoughts. So like, maybe Rita says ke, yeah, cheating is bad, but it's not like, I'm having like physical intimacy with this person, right? Like emotional cheating is not as bad, like I'm just talking to this person, right? But then again, like, of course, in every relationship it can be subjective, but usually, like, and you can decide upon what is cheating and what is not cheating. But emotional cheating does very much equate to, like, it is not like a lesser evil. But she might feel ke, oh, at least I'm not sleeping with this person, right? I'm just like spending more time. There's this emotional connection, right? So it's not as bad, right? Or another thing can be change one of the behaviors, right? Like, so either she stops cheating, or if she wants to continue doing that, she might change her behavior, where she might become less affectionate, so that there's no guilt ke, oh, I am saying I love you and being affectionate, at the same time I'm cheating on my husband, so maybe I'll stop giving affection, so that at least that guilt is not there. Or she might, like, traditionally, whatever the roles of a good wife are, other than the romantic affection towards the husband, like whatever she's expected to be like a good wife, maybe she'll start performing those roles better than the affection part of it, right? If Or another thing that can be done to decrease cognitive dissonance is add a new thought or a belief, which will which might rationalize, and the rationalization might help to reduce the inconsistency. It can be like, oh, but it's not like I'm the only person who cheats, or like, oh, it's very common in corporate jobs, or like it was an arranged marriage and I didn't even want to marry this person in the first place, so I'm the one who's at fault. Or maybe, my husband can be emotionally abusive, so I rather, be with this other person, right? So there is, so because cognitive dissonance is about like inconsistency between attitudes or thoughts or beliefs and the behavior, so we either try to change like one of these things and like decrease the tension that we feel because of the cognitive dissonance. S- Yeah. So next theory is sociobiology, right? As the name suggests, it's like social and biology. The basic understanding of this field, it's an entire field as well, and no, it's not just psychologists who study it. Even in biology, like STEM students, this has become like a very prominent subject, and they are supposed to study it. So it is, like to put it very simply, sociobiology is how the biological aspects affects human social behavior. So in sociobiology, it's not just related to humans, it's also like other animals, but of course here we will like focus on human social behavior. So what they believe, like sociobiologists, what do they believe is that it's not just like when evolution happens, right? Like earlier when like a lot of like years ago, the kind of height that Homo sapiens had, like it was a lot much more taller than what we are, like the average height traits, or the way our hair, like tropical countries have different skin and hair textures, right? So all of these physical traits have evolved to adapt to the in the world that we are living in. And sociobiologists, they say कि it's not just the physical traits that have evolved through time, it's also behavioral traits which have evolved, right? And which are these behavioral traits? These are the traits which have helped us, like we inherit, like what is the basic rule of, like one of the basic principles or understandings of evolutionary psychology. The behaviors that help us survive and reproduce do get inherited more, or like are passed down more, right? So similarly, even with regards to like behavioral traits, whichever behaviors help people to survive and have a reproductive success, and survive not just means कि, like survive in the like from the praise or things like that, but also survive in social groups, because you cannot, like since years and even now, like we have to we cannot live without community or living in a society, right? So behavioral traits which might have not helped people stay in groups or be with other people might have been excluded, and like the traits which help people to have like evolutionary success were passed down. Then there is a relationship between social behaviors and evolution, what we just discussed. Social behaviors shaped by natural selection. So like the way we think of physical traits which might be attractive, and like for example, or physical traits such as someone like thinking in a very evolutionary psychology point of view, someone who might be very strong enough, like for male and female, like the typical binary understanding, a male who might be of certain physique might get more preferences and chances of reproduction success will be higher. Similarly, social behaviors, then people will be like altruism is one of the most popular concepts of research in this area, where the reason for acting nice or helping others, a pro-social behavior, can be because that helps you stay in the group, or your chances of evolutionary success increases. So then that is what you keep on, the behavior keeps on repeating, and that's what you pass down to your next generations as well. And it's not just that evolution has this kind of effect, but it works the other way around as well, where the rates of reproductive success are related or dependent on the kind of, well, so again, this is like the social aspect of it. Okay, of course, like social behaviors will be shaped by evolution, natural selection, but evolution's success also depends on the social aspect of it, where person's power, maybe the physique is not there, but they do have a lot of social and financial power, so that might help them, right? So it goes like, it works both ways. Here, there's some like the two important pioneers in this field. One is Edward Wilson. He's considered the father of sociobiology, right? So he wrote the book The New Synthesis, where he he was the one who formalized the field and applied the different principles of evolutionary biology or psychology to the field. So you're connecting evolution to social behaviors, not just of humans, of like other animal species as well, including human beings. That's what he did. And he said कि biological, so there is, so like how other people in psychology say कि okay, maybe like in behaviorism we think about conditioning, learning, modeling, right? That is all like reward and punishment basis pay, we behave according to that perspective. In psychodynamics we think like, oh, how childhood experiences shape our behavior, right? In sociobiology we think how behavior is a result of biological basis. And here, and he believed that it's not like because of neurological or psychological reasons, but we will behave in certain manners based on our biological build-up. That was the understanding. Then the second important person here, like William Hamilton. If you've studied evolutionary psychology, right? I can't go like do a deep dive here, but just to give you a simpler base understanding. So here, as we spoke, like kin, like evolutionary success, right? So he talked about kin selection and altruism, the Hamilton rule, where R B is more than C. So which basically means C stands for cost, R is the relation, and B is the benefit. Right? I'll explain this. Basically, one of the important concepts is inclusive fitness. What is fitness? Fitness in evolutionary science is survival of my genes and passing down of my genes. That is basically one of the essence of evolutionary science, right? So inclusive fitness means that I will behave in a manner which will increase my fitness, right? So basically this is what this means is, let's say I am the like if I am stuck in a, if I can save, let's say my brother versus a person who I just met, like maybe my classmate, right? Who will I choose to select? So according to the inclusive fitness theory, I will choose my brother, not just because like he's my brother and the emotional aspect of it, but from an evolutionary point, my brother has like 50% same, like we share 50% same genes, right? So if he is safe, that means that there are more chances of my genes getting passed down, right? Versus this classmate, like yeah, I this person is my classmate, but this person is not related to me. So there are like, if I save this person, my genes are not getting like there is no it doesn't ensure like survival or like passing down of my genes, right? So kin selection, so we will look at the benefit will be more. So like if there are two brothers which could, which 50% and 50% means like 100% of like passing down of genes, right? So uh, people will try to be more altruistic or behave in pro-social manner towards people who are more like if the more they are related to me, right? I will try to be more helpful towards them as versus to someone who might not be related to me. So that is the understanding, overall understanding of the kin selection theory. Benefit, B stands for benefit and C stands for cost. Yeah. So moving on to social cognition. Okay, can you guys tell me, like, how do you figure out, how do you figure out if someone, you can choose to answer any one or all three of them? Like, if someone is, okay, oh, this person might be lying, or, you know, maybe you are in a position where you are trying to figure out, like, maybe you are in a committee where you are trying to figure out that has this student cheated or not, or maybe a friend is lying to you, you found out something, someone told you, okay, oh, this, you cannot trust this person, right? Or how do you figure out if someone has a crush on you? Or how do you figure out, like, when you're talking to someone and you realize, oh, like, my friend or my partner or my parent, like maybe my mother is mad at me, right? So can you explain, like, what is the process for you to um come to this conclusion, or try to figure out? Okay, by observing how their eye contact is. Okay, I think this can actually go for both, like the crush and lying part. Vibes for all three, mostly focusing on their micro expressions. Okay, perceiving and interpreting social cues when they don't make eye contact. Yes, yes, correct. Correct. Yeah. There are, we have our processes of, yeah, how we figure these things out, right? So this thing, right, when we're trying to understand, okay, what is happening, how do I make sense of this person's behavior? This is this is called social cognition. So, as the name suggests, social and cognition, social is the social behavior part of it, and cognition is us, trying to interpret, trying to think and understand. So, social cognition theory may, like, when we try to think, when we try to understand, when we try to basically make sense of what is happening in, interactions with other people, right? Like, what are their emotions? Like, where is this person coming from? What could they mean, right? And then based on that, like, we have to also respond appropriately, right? Like, if the person, I have to decide, okay, how do I react to it? If someone is being mean, ideally I should be able to stand up for myself, right? Or if I'm not able to understand if this person is being mean or not, then like, I'm the person might keep bullying me more and more, right? Or in other situations as well, where you have to understand, okay, when you are working or functioning in the social world, you have to figure out there is this back and forth interaction. And how do we decide, okay, how am I supposed to react to things, how am I supposed to understand what is happening? So that entire process, that is called social cognition, right? So, like, for example, if you're trying to figure out if someone is lying to you, so in social cognition there are these four processes or four elements that happen. And what are these elements? So you can try to put any example, like trying to figure out if someone is lying, or someone has a crush on you, if someone is angry at you, right? So you will pay attention. Attention is the first process, where you're trying to look at social cues. Some people answered body language, or some people said micro expressions, right? So you will try to figure out, okay, what is their their eye contact, what is the tone of speaking, what are they, like, are they fidgeting in their body, like, are they fidgeting with some things, are they not able to, like, maybe they are going into too much detail, as if they might have rehearsed this information a lot, right? So you pay attention to the social cues, both like verbal, non-verbal, the content of what they're telling you, right? Then the second process that happens here is interpretation, where you're trying to figure out, okay, this person is not making eye contact, maybe they are, like, that's one big thing that a lot of us go to, right? Like, why is this person, like, why are they not making eye contact? Are they guilty about something? Are they scared to, are they hiding something from me, right? So you interpret, what could this mean? Like, why did they say it in this manner? Why did they go into too much detail? Right? So we are trying to interpret this. After paying attention to things, we try to interpret what, their behavior, their content of their speech, the way they have delivered, like the way they've talked, about certain things, right? And then the third process used here is memory, where we use, like, from our past experiences, maybe about the person or maybe lying in general, where, oh, this person, this, how sometimes some people have a tell when they are lying or they are hiding certain things. Maybe they'll touch their neck, maybe they'll play with their hair, but you learn certain things about people, or you learn about lying, like, a lot. You said ki eye contact, maybe when they are not making eye contact. So this, from memory ke, in previous past experiences, you have seen ki when people lie, they usually don't make eye contact, right? So from memory, you use to interpret this information about the other person. And then judgment is the last process, where you finally figure out ki, okay, this is what I know for sure, 99% this person is lying to me. Or, I think that person might be having a crush on me. Or, like, this person, like, they're being, I can sense this hostile energy, the tone of their speech, like they might be mad at me, right? And then you make decisions about the person, decisions about how should I respond, right? Or like you try to understand emotions as well. Okay, okay, maybe this person is behaving in this manner, maybe because it could be something else. Maybe this person is not making eye contact because they're scared and there's anxiety. Then, should I say, okay, I'm 90% sure this person is lying? No, right? So, like, these are the major processes that take place during social cognition. Yeah. Any doubts still here, guys? Okay. Yeah. So, just a few MCQs that we can, like, this is based on what we just, studied. So, the first question is, what does the concept of inclusive fitness primarily explain in sociobiology? So, yeah. Should I read out the options as well? Yes, yes, correct. See, the evolutionary advantage of helping relatives reproduce, because that will be more beneficial to you, and helping someone might cost you something, but if the benefits are more, which is, evolutionary success, the cost is, you are okay to bear the cost, especially when, it is ensuring your, like, genes getting passed down. Then, yeah, second, what is social cognition primarily referred to in psychology? Correct, correct. The way people process, store, and apply information about others and social situations. Yeah, in Lewin's formula, B equals to function of person, or, oh, sorry, P and E. What do the letters represent? Oh, I just realized all the answers are C. My bad. Yeah. Who proposed the theory of cognitive dissonance? Correct. Yeah. According to cognitive dissonance theory, how do people typically reduce dissonance? Yes, correct. Okay. All right. Just one second. Yeah. So, I'm actually done for the day, but we do have some time. Uh, I didn't realize we would, not take much time here. So, another one more theory that, we can, like, continue with. I'll just stop sharing my screen. Okay. So there's like, also like psychodynamic approaches to social psychology, where we try to understand, like, so what are the things that come under like psychodynamics when we talk about psychoanalytics or psychodynamics. What are the major concepts of psychodynamics? Can you guys like quickly tell me? Yes, yes, correct. Ego, super ego, so the anxiety, yes. When it comes to these theories, yeah. So when we, yes, early childhood, correct. So according to the psychodynamic approaches to social psychology, right? We what we try to do is how there's an interplay between, like for example, like this can we can try to understand it from the perspective of, application based, like in therapy understanding, for example, like childhood experiences or maybe certain defense mechanisms. So, how these things shape us, or how do we behave in social context, right? These things can have an effect on it. Like, for example, let's say someone has grown up in a certain, a very controlling household where, they might have not received a lot of affection from their parents, right? And maybe there's a lot of neglect, not a lot of freedom or autonomy given to that person, right? And then childhood experiences shape the person, but how they will behave in social context, right? So that will maybe have an effect on how they will end up working, how they will show up in relationships, right? How they will have the kind of friendships that they have, the kind of maybe, work ethic, right? So like psychodynamic approaches can have a like, like it's not like, because a lot of times the critique of psychodynamics is that, not everything is about so and so, or we try to look at it from uh, like psycho analysis. Like after the progression of psychodynamics, we had psychoanalysis, and then social psychology aspect adds to, how will this person is not just, this is not just about me, but how am I acting in a group setting, or my interpersonal relationships. Another thing that we can understand is, about like um in in cases of like prejudice or discrimination, where is essential. So attachment, not necessarily, since attachment is essentially related to interpersonal relationships. Would that become primary subject of investigation? It is a That's a really good question. So it can be, but primary, like when we do try to understand social influence or interpersonal relationships, usually attachment comes like majorly is done in like psychoanalysis, right? Where we studied like the attachment theory or the objective relative theory, right? So that is the, if we have to differentiate and categorize it, it will come in psychoanalysis. But we can have like the understanding of, like, we can do a combination of it. Here it might not be the primary subject of investigation, but more of, because the origination comes from a different field of psychology, right? So it might not be the primary subject, but it can fall under social psychology. That's a really good perception of it. Yeah. So yes. So yeah, I was talking about discrimination. So another important concept of how we try to like the psychodynamic approaches to social psychology. One thing that we do focus on is understanding discrimination or prejudice from psychodynamics approach as well, right? This can come from like certain, maybe sometimes like defense mechanism, sometimes like certain personality types, where the authoritarian personality, where people are not open to like new, like the openness factor is very less, so they might not be open to new information about. They might have like the strong beliefs about certain communities, certain groups of people, right? And they will hold on to those things for a longer time, which will then result into them having biases or prejudice about certain communities, right? So that understanding of prejudice or discrimination in social psychology can also be done from a psychodynamic approach this way. Yeah. Any more doubts or any questions, guys? I'm so sorry. I thought it will take much longer time. I thought it would cover like an hour. So yeah. If there are any other things, I'll just check if I've missed. Yeah. Uh, just one second. So we can also do the attributional theory. So this was okay. Thank you. All the best for your entrance exam. Uh, yeah, we can maybe start, but I don't have like the PPT right now, so it will just be oral explanation if that works. Like about social perception. Okay, okay. So social perception is basically how we perceive what others, or we try to again try to understand like other people's behavior, or trying to figure out. It's not the reasoning about why this person is behaving this way, right? Like attribution, we'll start with like the attributional theory. I'll cover this again quickly in the next session. So in attribution is basically trying to figure out why someone behaves that way. But this comes under social perception, where it is not the actual reasons. Like when we study other theories of psychology, we try to understand why the person is actually behaving that way, and we try to reason out, right? In psychodynamics, maybe from a CBT perspective, in therapy we try to understand okay, oh, what could have led to this person behaving, which could be the objective reality of why this person is actually behaving that way, right? But in so under social perception, it might not be that this person is behaving because of that very reason, but it could be because I feel how do I make sense of certain things, right? So in attribution theory, how do I make sense of why this person is behaving in this manner? Yeah. So I have like proper material to it, but right now I do not have the access to it. What we'll do is maybe you guys can take a break and join in for the 7 o'clock class. I will cover this. I will make up for this 15 minutes more in the um different. Yeah, social perception, how is it different than social cognition? That's a good question. In social perception, okay, I think I'll answer this once I teach social perception, if that is okay. Yeah, but in social cognition, there are like a lot more processes involved, where it's not just figuring out why a person is behaving in a certain manner, but it is also how will I react to, how am I it's also it also contributes to how I react to it. Versus in social perception, you might not always need to react to certain things, right? Like for example, let's say you are driving on the highway, you're driving, okay, and one of the because you have certain biases, and let's say a car like does like some weird like cuts in front of you, and then you see okay, oh, it's a woman, and then your go-to response will be like, oh, of course this person is like she's a woman, so she's a horrible driver. So and then there's no reaction to it, you're just like, you'll just perceive that person in a certain manner, right? Versus maybe, maybe the woman did the cut because, maybe sometimes there can be normal, like, it's not just women, but men can also sometimes, like, because we are human beings, for certain reasons maybe she was thinking something else, or maybe she couldn't see something, right? So that could be a reason, but she might be a great driver otherwise. And if you check statistics, it's men who do end up having like the higher amounts of accidents, so the objective reality is not that, but I will perceive it ke, oh, if I see ke, oh, she's a woman, so she's a horrible driver, right? But here, that doesn't mean ke, I don't have to react to it, right? But so that is perception, social perception, where I'm trying to figure out, or where I'm attributing ke, why she must be a bad driver. Why did this car in front of me cut, like, make this weird cut? Because she is a woman, so she must be, so of course she's a horrible driver. So, in attribution theory, you are trying to figure out why they are behaving that way. And in social cognition, you are just figuring out what, or like, where are they coming from, right? Like, figuring out ki whatever, like, just understand, like, maybe you can understand social cognition, like, if an autistic person is, trying to function and trying to make sense of the world, right? Where, oh, this is happening, this person is talking in this manner, so I'm trying to understand, okay, what could they mean, where are they coming from, what are their emotions, so how am I supposed to react to it, how do I, so it's a social cognition is making sense of the world, and how do I participate in that social world. And social perception is, or like, the attributional theory that I spoke about now, is just trying to understand ke, why this person would have behaved in that manner. So it is limited to that, if that makes sense. uh okay, one question earlier when we were discussing evolutionary perspective, how can influence our, how can, how that can influence our attraction. Example, muscular men may be regarded as more socially attractive because they might make better mates. In that context, want to know, is that perhaps one of the reasons why uh, okay, this is a great question. So one thing about like evolutionary psychology is it's borderline quite problematic, and like, this is just my personal opinion. If you read like a lot of the theories in evolutionary psychology, they're not really backed by any scientific data, or like, a lot of it does justify very horrible things, and pedophilia is one of them. And there are theories which even justify rape for that matter, right? But what we have to understand is that it's just a theory. That's not a, like, the material reality, or it's not a rule ke, like, older men are like, in evolutionary also, they do try to justify, a lot of theorists, where, oh, of course older men will be, so according to the evolutionary perspective, the most attractive, like, the features of a woman, if you look at, the descriptions, they describe like a child, because, flawless skin, hairless skin, bigger eyes, things like that, right? And they just say ki, oh, because, a younger woman is more, has more fertility, she will be, she will have more chances of, bearing my children, right? So then they justify it that way, but it doesn't have to be like, I feel like, my personal, like, my personal opinion, okay, this, perhaps like, one of the reasons why older men tend to be attracted to younger women, like, they are not, that is the thing. But I feel a lot of evolutionary psychology just tries to, and it's just not just evolutionary psychology, but that is, I feel, a very popular trend around the world, because there were groups, trying to have pedophiles included in the LGBTQ community as well. So if you look at the current things, or like, the crimes that happen around the world as well, a lot of it tries to justify these things. But you can have your own opinion, and like, agree or disagree to it, if that makes sense. And the muscular men thing, like, again, like, it's a very typical thing, like, okay, this person might be strong so they can, fight off predators or protect the family. But then again, here you see कि there is no age ka mention. So like, why, and like, it just seems very like problematic. Y- yeah, exactly correct what Kushi said. And it's just like, how a lot of older men, like, do not, because once women get older, they understand, they are not easy to get manipulated, whereas younger women are more vulnerable to getting manipulated. That's why if there is a lot of like older men might go for younger women in reality, because they might be easier to manipulate, where women from their age might not be, might not uh, they'll call out their manipulative behavior. So that is what happens in the real world, and it doesn't really explain okay, they use it as a justification, but that doesn't have to be the reason, because we know, like, menopause happens a little later, so even women in their 30s and 40s can become mothers. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Arima. Yeah, definitely. Like, me, patriarchy has a role in it. Uh, okay, I saw a graph from a research paper that mapped the age of the respondent and the ideal type for women. The graph increased and then flattened, but for yikes. Yeah. Yeah, and if you also look at the popular culture, right, a lot of like even right from anime to like the Halloween costumes, there's like, that's what I'm saying. Ki it's not just evolutionary psychology, but if you look at like other domains in the world, like there is this very intense process of justifying or normalizing sexualization of children, right? Like difference between like in western countries where they do wear swimsuits, right? Look at the swimsuits for girls and look at the swimsuits for boys. Like, why are the swimsuits for girls so sexualized or so like revealing? They are literally like 5 6 year old girls. So even evolutionary psychology falls into that very thing. And a lot of evolutionary psychology theories are not backed, like as like social psychology. We're conducting experiments, we're doing like they're different, like it's a scientific, very rigorous scientific field. But not a lot of like most of evolutionary